We actually have a Synchro Stardust deck featuring Oxel Synchro Stardust, which is amazing. We have Ancient Warriors back at it again, and some interesting shark variations. We have the Dinner and Spirit, 3 Field Center bundle and playmat. I will leave a link down below so you guys can grab yours today. It's some of the best value, and honestly, I think this might be one of my favorite projects that we've made to date. Don't beg the 30% of you that have not smashed the ever-living crap out of that subscribe button. Smash it so you guys don't miss out on more awesome content. So we actually have a working list featuring On Your Marks, Get Set, Duel, and the beautiful, amazing Oxel Synchro Stardust Dragon. Now, do keep in mind that this deck will be getting a very strong power-up here in the near future that's going to put this deck way more ahead in terms of development in this. Now, do keep in mind for this deck, I mean, Junk Speeder is going to be your friend. This card needs to be able to resolve, and 95% of the time you start seeing this resolve, as long as your opponent doesn't have a Nibiru, you're going into an incredibly strong winning game position. So keep that in mind here. So we have triple copies of Ash Blossom, Enjoy Spring. We have triple copies of Doppel Warrior. We have 2 copies of Jet Synchron with 1 copy of Junk Synchron. Just 1, by the way. We have 1 copy of Magician Souls with 1 Mare, 2 copies of Satellite Synchron with triple copies of Stardust Synchron. We have 1 Stardust Tail, then we have 1 Synchron Carrier, 1 Griffin Rider with triple Water Enchantress, 2 Illusion of Chaos, 1 Draco Back, 1 Faithful Adventure with 1 Foolish Barrel, 2 copies of On Your Mark, Get Set, Duel, 1 Rhoda, 2 copies of Rite of Amnesia, 1 Stardust Illumination, 1 Thrust, triple Tuning, and triple Imperm here. Down here in the extra deck, we have 1 Yazi, 1 copy of Hyper Librarian, 1 Stardust, 1 copy of Stardust Charge Warrior, 1 Omega, 1 Martial Metal Marcher, 2 copies of Junk Speeder, 1 Herald with 1 Dawn Dragster, we have 1 Crystal Wing, we have 1 copy of the Celestial Double Star, 1 Baron, 1 Excel Synchron, and 1 copy of the Excel Synchro Stardust. Then we have 2 copies of Space Rock, triple copies of Book of Eclipse, 2 Cosmic Cyclone, 1 Harpy Starluster, 2 Anti-Spell Fragrance, triple copies of Evenly Matched, and 2 copies of Gravity Collapse here. Wrapping up your Synchro Stardust good stuff. I am incredibly happy to see that this deck is actually functioning out here. Like, this is awesome. Next up here, we have Ancient Warriors. Now, what I think is actually cool about this deck is, considering one, really nobody knows how to play against this deck, all right? I will say that in terms of combo lines and things that players can go through with this deck is incredibly strong. But my major downside to this is, I mean, your boards don't feel that good. And I mean, Double Dragon Lords here is essentially like the best card that your deck kind of has going for it. Outside of, I mean, like the more generic boss monsters. So you really need to consider that at the end of the day here for what you're going to be stepping into in your best matchups. I mean, you obviously have hand traps and things to assist you, but it's still rough. So 1 copy of the Deceptive G-Wen. We have 1 copy of the Electric Lu Jing. I never see this card. I actually never see either of these 2 see play. We have 2 copies of the Fearsome Zhang Yun, triple copies of the Graceful Zogong, 2 copies of the Ingenious Zokong, and then we have triple copies of the Loyal Gan Yun, triple copies of the Masterful Sun Mao, 2 copies of the Rebellious Lu Fang. This card's so good. We have 2 copies of the Savage Dan Ying, and then we have 1 copy of the Valiant Zhang Di, and then we have 2 Virtuous Lu Zuan. And then, of course, 2 Ash, 2 copies of Droll, and 2 copies of Nibiru. And then you got 1 copy of the Borrowing of Arrows. Okay. Triple copies of Deception and Betrayal. 1 copy of Easy by South Winds. And then we have 1 Shu Alliance. Triple copies of 3 Visits, triple Tenki, triple Small World. 1 copy of the Chivalrous Path. 1 Defense of the Shaban, and then we have 2 copies of Infinite Permanence. And then, of course, 1 Royal Goddess, 1 Nightmare Phoenix, 1 Cerberus, your 1 Iria, 1 Dahark, triple Double Dragon Lords, 1 Axis Code, 1 Totally Awesome, 1 Baguski, 1 Cowboy, your 1 Tiger King, your 1 Bahamut Shark, and your 1 Dweller. Then, of course, triple Cosmic, 1 Feather Duster, 2 Lightning Storm, triple Regeki, triple Evenly Matched, and triple copies of Skill Drain here. Wrapping up Ancient Warriors. Next up is this pile. And by this pile, we're playing Sharks, which is fine. I mean, this is cool. And then we're playing a Kashtira package in here, which is incredibly interesting to me because the inclusion of this package basically shows that this deck can kind of adapt and kind of get out of some particularly closed positions here, which I do think is kind of important at the end of the day for what you want to be able to do for this deck. So we have triple copies of Ash Blossom and Joy Spring. We have triple copies of the Beautiful Princess, triple copies of Buzzsaw Shark, triple copies of the Fenrir, one copy of Rise Heart with triple copies of Unicorn. We have two copies of Lantern Shark with one Lifeless Leaffish, triple copies of Angler with two copies of the Exceed Remora. We have one Called by the Grave, one Birth with one Kashtira Theosis, one copy of One for One, triple copies of Raceloth with two copies of Talents. We also have triple copies of the powerful White Mirror, triple copies of Imperm, and one Big Bang. Then we have two Totally Awesome, one Kraken Spawn with one Utopic Future, one Utopic Future Draco with one Diabolsis. We have one Stealth Kraken with one Big Eye, one Shangri-La, one Arise Heart with one Exciton, two Zeus, and two copies of the Bahamut Shark here. And then we have one copy of Pinkertops, two Nibiru with one Cowboy. We have two Enemy Controller with one Feather Duster, your two Twin Twisters, one Appointer, triple evenly matched, and two copies of Solemn Judgment here, wrapping up, well, kind of an interesting choice here for engines. I mean, I understand, like, the Kashtira package is a very solid, like, inclusion in this deck. Like, this is the backbone, all right? The Shark engine does feel a little bit subpar, but you have to understand that you need these very good cards right now. And this shows that even, like, on the bare bones here, that this engine is able to be incorporated into this and actually work out here. So I like what we're seeing. Next up here, we have Marincess. How many Marincess players are there this form? I'm glad to see, one, that players are dedicated to the craft of this deck. It's absolutely amazing. Number two, I mean, how many people don't actually know what Marincess does at this point? And I think the answer is a lot of people do not solidly understand what this deck does, how this deck wants to combo, or the places to cut this deck off. And I think that at the end of the day, not having the knowledge that you need for this matchup does give Marincess the advantage. I mean, that's really what it is. But it is still very impressive, nonetheless, just to see, you know, where we're getting our success lines here. So we have triple copies of Ash Blossom, triple copies of Effecto, two copies of Ghostspell. We have one copy of Moonlit Chill with triple copies of Blue Tang. We have two copies of Mandarin with two copies of Pascal's. We have triple copies of Seahorse with triple copies of Spring Girl. And then we have triple copies of the Giant Space Rock. And then we have triple Signet Mining, one Battle Ocean with two Dive. We have two Pod Desires with triple Talents. We also have triple Infinite Permanence and one copy of the Wave. Down here in the extract, we have one Zealantis, one Splash Mage with two copies of Sea Angel. We have one Marbled Rock with one Bubble Reef, one Crystal Heart with one Triangle. We have two Coral Anemone, two Blue Slug, one Argonaut, one Toad, and one Bahamut Shark. Then we have triple Droll, one Called by, triple Dark Ruler, one Arby's Feather Duster, triple Lightning Storm, one Twin Twisters, and triple Gozen Match here, wrapping up the power of this amazing deck. Other things to really keep in mind, though, for this deck, you do have to understand that, like, this card is going to be your power play. Obviously, I mean, you can set up draw power and things. You have interruptions through this. I mean, wiping an entire field with a Zealantis is incredibly powerful at the end of the day. You have so many options here to just do some really cool plays. It's what makes this deck, I think, really, really good. And the last we actually have for you here is we're actually playing Fur Hire cards with Sprite cards with a Runick package. Are we just trying out bad ideas here? Like, what is going on here? Well, it would appear at the end of the day that you are getting away with some particularly interesting things, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing here. So we have one copy of Raphael, one copy of Beat, triple copies of Jet with one red. We have triple copies of Sprite Blue with one copy Sprite Carrot. We have one copy of Dompa, triple copies of Rex. We have triple copies of Talents, triple copies of Starter, triple copies of Freezing Curses, triple Tip, one copy of Rookie for Hire, triple copies of Slumber, triple copies of the Flashing Fire, two Smashers, your triple Destruction, and two copies of the Fountain. Then we have triple copies of Donner, two copies of Fogo, one Djinn Buster with two Zeus. We have triple copies of the Hugin, two Gary, and two copies of Sprite Gigantic. And then we have one Raigeki, one Harpy's Feather Duster, triple Twin Twisters, triple copies of Foolish Return, one Smashers, triple copies of Dimensional Barrier, and, of course, triple copies of Solemn Judgment here, wrapping up some very interesting particulars out here for these lists. I like what we're seeing here. So what do you think about, once again, some crazy ideas that are being thrown around out here at the tournament level? And yeah, it's really, really good. So please, leave a comment down below, tell me what you guys think, and I will see your beautiful faces back here later on the day. And of course, you guys keep a smile on your face, alright? I know life can be difficult sometimes. Patrons, thank you!
Thank you so much for watching. Check out these other videos.